I Know This Much Is True stars Mark Ruffalo as twin brothers grappling with trauma and mental illness alongside a dream ensemble of actors, including actor, comedian, activist and author Rosie O'Donnell, like you've never seen her before. I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor at Gold Derby. Rosie, when you were offered the role of social worker Lisa Shepard, what were your initial thoughts about how you wanted to dive in and bring her to life?
Well, I love the book so much, and I read it all those years ago, and I've been thinking about this character and what a wonderful role it would be to play. So when I heard that Mark Ruffalo's wife had recommended me to Derek and to Mark to play this role because of seeing me in Smilf on Showtime. And so they watched Smilf, and then he brought me in for a meeting, and we sat and talked for almost 3 hours. And he said, would you be willing to cut your hair? I said, yes, I would, any way you want. And so there we were. That was the final thing, and I think he was sure right then. He told me.
And so in the process of developing this series and, of course, your character, did you find anything particularly challenging in terms of getting into her head and making her an authentic person based on your love of the book?
Well, also, I had a teacher when I was a little kid. My mom died when I was 10 years old in the 5th grade. And then when I was in the 7th grade, I had this wonderful public school teacher named Pat Marivelle, who really took me under her wing and saw like this motherless kid and stepped in a maternal way. And she was a social worker. And I watched her. I lived, with them for a while. And I saw what it takes to be a social worker and what kind of person she was and how she lived her life so truthfully and honestly. And, you have to give your heart without getting it broken. And it's a challenging job. And I was thrilled that I got to bring all of Pat Marivelle to the role of Lisa because, that's who I was thinking of in my head.
Yeah. Without giving too much away, because it's still airing, the series explores some very tragic themes, just obviously like the book. And the scenes are often difficult to watch. I imagine it would be even more challenging to shoot them. Did you find that that the show ever took its toll on you personally?
No, it was such a wonderful, artistic, creative, respectful working environment. It was one of the nicest sets I had ever been on, and he's my favorite director now. I love the way he, gets what he wants out of moments of authenticity by shooting over and over again and trying things with, the camera with one take and moving. I mean, he's just, he's an artist through and through, Derek, and it was a joy to do it, and I was able to sort of leave it there. But I will say it was a little bit creepy that we were shooting in an old mental hospital and it had been closed and dilapidated for years, but it definitely had some vibes in there of times gone by. That was a little creepy when you pull up at dawn, and it's like this old mansion of horror,
But that's good. That sets the tone, I suppose, because it is a dark and sometimes a little depressing series to watch. It's very rewarding by the end of it. But when I spoke to Catherine Hahn, she said that Derek brings this special quality to set because he's so authentic and he will spend a lot of time setting up a scene, even for a scene that goes for like 10 seconds on screen. Did you find that as well, that you were so immersed in this world?
Yes, completely. And, he sometimes would ask you to do 30 or 40 takes. And it's not because he didn't get what he wanted in the first 30. It's because he's always searching for that one other piece of gold, that tiny little, something that shines more than the rest of the performances. And the authenticity is what he picks out, So once he feels that his gas tank is full, he could say, okay, we'll go on to the next scene. And again, we start with an empty gas tank and we fill it up with, as close to the truth as we can get. And he lives a beautiful truth and a wonderful life. And I admire who he is as a man as well as a director.
Doing all those takes over and over again, it sounds like it would be quite draining for the performers, the actors who are on set actually doing them. Did you find that, given that this is not how every director works, that was particularly challenging, just to to give it your all. And what about, did you find that it worked, that it did get those nuggets of gold that perhaps weren't there to begin with?
Yes, I think that that's his whole style of filmmaking and why his films are so incredibly moving and stirring and almost haunting. The Lighthouse, one about adoption, that one, he tried to get the lead to stay in the lighthouse while they were, instead of going back to his hotel room. And he so wants to immerse himself, and does, in every aspect of his art that he's currently making. And it's a beautiful thing to watch and to be a part of.
And then conversely, the series cast are all excellent, but Mark Ruffalo, it's probably the best thing I've ever seen him do. What was the highlight of working alongside him?
Well, he's playing somebody in the NBA, and I felt like my job was just to keep getting him the ball and watching where he's going and, following him and supporting him as much as I could, because I knew he was undertaking a Herculean task by trying to do these two performances at once, without a green screen and, putting his body through so much. But when you see the finished results, you're so glad that they decided to do it the way they did it and shoot it so that it's so realistic. It's trippy to watch that car scene, I tell you.
Yeah, it really, really is. And maybe it was 5 seconds where I was trying to work out how the hell they did it, and then it just went away because I was so immersed in what he was doing. It's quite a task to put the audience so immersed in a project, and yet I think this did it perfectly. Did you find in your scenes, particularly in the one-on-ones that you were having with the brother, that they were necessarily challenging to do? Was there any particular scene that you thought that really took it out of you?
No, I felt like it was ping pong, and I had to bring my A game, and so whatever ball they hit you hit it back, and you try to keep the game going, and find the truth then as it drops out, and if there was a way that we could just only get that, and I think that's what Derek did with his editing. He took the authenticity that he is so good at finding and creating and leaving space for in his films, that he really creates those moments of authenticity, and it's the currency that he trades in. So everything has to be sacrificed to the truth and what's authentic, and it's a beautiful way to work.
And so then when you look back, when all is said and done, and you look back at your performance in the series, what would you say was your highlight? I mean, obviously you're very proud of your work, but is there anything in particular where you'll think back in years to come and think that was special because of something?
Well, I think the opening scene that you're going to see on Sunday is Mark and I going back and forth, and that was the first day I was on the set, and it was a 12-page scene, and I thought, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get this. Because, as the funny friend, you usually come in, and you're out, It's not like you have this 12 pages of one-on-one dialogue. So, that will be interesting if you know that, to when you're watching it, to think that was my first day, that huge, huge scene.
Yeah, it's as I said earlier, it's not what we would expect from a Rosie O'Donnell performance. It's it's understated and very nuanced. This lady has obviously a lot of pain in her own life, but she's extremely empathetic, and you're drawn to her instantly. I mean, were you drawn to her instantly when you started to kind of get inside her skin? Yeah,
completely, and it fit me, it fit me. It wasn't a stretch for me to have to go try to find this character I had lived with, grown up with, and been parented by a social worker. And it was kind of in my bones, and I knew how to service the piece, and listening to Derek and getting to work with Mark was, more than I could ever ask for as an entertainer and an artist and an actor. It was fulfilling on every level.
And so my final question about this before we pivot to a few other things is, what do you think this book and series is ultimately trying to say? Is it about family? Is it about mental illness? Is it about both and other things? For you, what did you take out of it personally?
You know, it's about a family and forgiveness and how that works in our culture, you know. Every family you have has stories like this, and war wounded. And, you know, you don't really get to see them played out so beautifully and so realistically on screen as you do. And I know this much is true. I think that we captured the human spirit, and the movie's about, you know, the trials of Job, right? That's what it reminded me of. Everything that could go wrong in his life goes wrong, and yet he still climbs up for the battle, you know? He's still trying to help his brother, no matter what it's doing to himself. I thought it was very powerful with that theme, too, of, you know, the caregiver. Who's the sick one? Who's the caregiver, you know?
Yeah. I took a lot out of it personally. The last couple of episodes are incredibly moving, very profound. Yeah, so anyway, it was a wonderful series and you were great in it. But let's pivot to a few more things before we let you go.
Right.
Back in the day, you were winning Emmys left and right during your time on the Rosie O'Donnell show. Does winning awards and nominations year after year ever get old?
Yes, and you feel selfish, you know, because unlike the Grammy Awards, which has thousands of musicians, you know, CDs and DVDs that they're going through, anyone can be nominated. It's not always the same 5 people. But because the daytime Emmys, there were so few shows in daytime that, you know, it got to be kind of ridiculous. And we felt like kind of bad about it, you know. And the year that I first won, then after that, Oprah decided to never enter again. And so then that made me win more. If she had not decided that, I wouldn't have had all my Emmys, you know, but for some reason she felt too that it got old and she had had enough.
I mean, the beauty is, as you mentioned, the first one you won, you were in competition, which no one likes to say it's a competition, but at least you know that you won it not because she was out of the running, but because you were the best at the time.
That's true.
I always ask this to multiple award winners because, you know, Gold Derby, this is kind of what we do. Is the first one more special? Is the second one even better because it's like a pat on the back, we still like you? Or, you know, is the last one the most special because you still got it?
Well, I don't know. The first one was pretty special just because it was against Oprah Winfrey, and it was like very quick. It had happened from, you know, the September, and then we were at the Emmys, and it was me against Oprah, and I was like, what the hell's happening, you know? So, but it emotionally, we'll never forget that one. And I also love the one that I got for producing the Tonys. So that one is pretty special too. So, and I have a honorary Tony that I keep in my house on display. That's the only one that's on display.
And why is that?
I don't know. It seemed to mean the most, you know, the theater honoring you for your commitment to theater is a pretty big deal to me, you know. I don't know. Phil's just felt something special about it.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm going to set up this question for you just so you know where I'm coming from. But when I first saw you back in 1992, I think I was probably 15 and I was already very much entranced by pop culture. You were presenting Best Lighting Design at the Emmys, and you made this really great gag about Richard Simmons. And I was like, who is this? She is so funny. And then you said, tongue-in-cheek, damn, who lit this? And to me, it is, I've always wanted to tell you this, it's the funniest award presentation ever. And I chuckle over it from time to time all these years later. Now, that's a very obscure reference, I know. Are you often surprised by what people on the street know you for or admire you for and want to talk to you about?
It is very, very shocking. I can usually tell how old someone is by what they know me from. So there are little kids, like not little kids, like teenagers who say, "Oh my God, are you from the Fosters?" Like they can't believe that I was on the Fosters. And I'm like, yes, I was. And, other people saying, "Oh, you're the one who did Broadway stuff," Yes, that was me. Yes. Like there's so many ways to come at me. You're the one who's a mom.
Yeah.
You're the one whose mom's died. You're the one who's gay. You're the one who has all the kids. You're the one who adopted. You're the one who, like, I have there's so many entry points into kind of me and why people were drawn to me. And it's kind of trippy for me to think about, I hear stories like that of young 15-year-old kids getting inspired, remembering something, laughing. Like it means everything to me because that's who I was doing it for, all the kids at home, or dreaming of a life in showbiz, Like I used to watch Merv Griffin and think, oh, imagine if I could go out after dinner with them. Like they all go out, Tony Fields and Sammy Davis. That was my image of the whole thing, that everybody was friends and there was a there.
Yeah. I think that's so cool that you get to have this legacy and this impact on random people across the globe who you've never met. And that's just like anyone in showbiz. But for you, as you say, it's such a varied career and we all have a different way in. And that was mine. It was a long time ago. I'll be plenty more since then. What I really admire you for now is how you're known for speaking your mind. You're an activist. You never shy away from speaking up. You did that on The View for years. You've had the honor of getting under the current president's luminescent skin, and you're an advocate. And I wonder, despite, and I'm sure you've answered this many times, despite the ferocious criticism and backlash that you will, likely get every time you open your mouth, like anybody, is speaking up in this day and age worth it?
It's vital. It's all we have left. We have to use our voices, raise our voices in unison. No, this is not America. No, you are not a king. You do not get to decide what the Constitution means. Other people do. And if the Supreme Court allows him to not release those taxes, we will have gone full dictatorship. We will have totally, spit on the Constitution and the powers and the separation of church and state, and Congress's job is to oversee the president. That's the job of the Congress. He's trying to take away the job of the Congress. It's really unbelievable. I can't wait until he's out. He causes me so much surus, which is a Yiddish word for like upsetness. He makes me so upset every day with his lying to everyone and now opening up the country with this happy talk. And where are we going to be in 4 weeks? We're going to be back in lockdown.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. And specifically because of your past experience and so many others, how do you think we got to a point in our society where it appears acceptable for a leader to call women in public pigs or dogs, for example, like that kind of thing?
And he's done so much more than that. He's a misogynist. You saw how he was with Zhu Zhenchang, I think her name is. The way he said China to her, like, people shout racial epithets at people. That's exactly what he was doing. He's like this horribly repressed teenage anger and he's so dumb. That's the thing that really gets me, is he's so stupid. He's a stupid person and he thinks he can just keep lying his way through everything. Well, it's in the Supreme Court's hands right now. And if they decide to allow him to not have to give his private records, I think that we will have lost the democracy in the United States of America.
Yeah. Given how polarized America is right now, and given what your series, I know this much is true, is ultimately about forgiveness and family and unity, are you hopeful for a future of less of the us and them mentality, or do you think that is really inevitably going to be here to stay for some time?
Well, the people in power don't like to give it up. They usually have to be forced to give it up. And, he and his highfalutin Republican friends are rolling in the dough. It didn't get passed out to all those private shop owners. It didn't get passed out to the people who are going to lose their livelihoods. And, you know, with numbers at the Depression and beyond, what we have to look forward to when this is over is going to be epically tragic. And, you know, there's no way that Donald Trump is the remedy for any of this. He's the cause of it all. And I think that it is essential, it is vital, it is the only moral choice to vote for Joe Biden, and pray to God that the members of his cult wake up. Maybe with these tax returns, they'll wake up and see who he is and what he is. The con man through and through, and bankrupting businesses and cheating charities and lying through his teeth about every single thing. Every accomplishment he's ever made, he's made up in his mind. He's a very sick man. You know, has narcissistic personality disorder, and he's probably borderline personality disorder. He's lacking empathy. He's a very, very mentally ill man. And that's what's the most horrifying to me, that we would be allowing him to make life and death decisions for everyone when he is so clearly mentally ill.
Yeah, it's slightly terrifying. But on that note, Rosie, we really appreciate your time today. We thought you were brilliant in I Know This Much Is True, and we look forward to watching the whole series on HBO.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Now, everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions, and click subscribe. We've got lots of fantastic contender chats just like this one with Rosie.